This is Uncle Nelson, or as we call him, Unky. He's from the game Schedule 1, a game you might have heard of due to its sudden popularity about a year ago or so. It's pretty fun. You make and sell drugs.
I not condone manufacturing or use of actual drugs, just throwing that in there.
He's in the intro tutorial of the game and calls you on a payphone at some points in the game so far. Me and my girlfriend find the characters rather charming, and she wanted a figure of Uncle Nelson, so here we go. So I started with the usual aluminum foil and wire. Also using Sculpey medium again, and the sculpting for this guy was pretty straightforward. The shapes are pretty simple. I ended up redoing the eyes at the end because they became too big, which is a bit of a surprising mistake considering the character's proportions. I added a bit too much detail, if you can even call it that. I scored some outlines for the facial features, like the beard, eyebrows, eyelids, and pupils, most of which ended up getting smoothed out in the end, and just painted on instead. The trickiest part to sculpt was the wheelchair. I made a basic shape for it on paper, traced it onto some flattened clay and carved it out. Then embedded some wire into it as well for it to be a bit more structurally rigid. It's possible I could have made the whole thing out of wire, but I went with clay and made it a lot thicker than it should be, but this way it did end up more solid. I also added some cut-up stir sticks for some extra strength for the seat area. The wheels were annoying, but made in much the same way. And once I had done one, I made a blue stuff Oyumaru mold, so I only had to make it once and got a pretty good copy of it easily. I also bent an aluminum wire into a circle for the outer ring part on the wheels. Actually made the wheelchair too short, or maybe the wheels too big, but in any case I did not have enough space for his gun. Uncle Nelson has a gun holster on the side of his chair on one side. We aren't going for 100% accuracy here, so if I'd gone for 100% accuracy, I would have failed long ago. I made the skin painting more complicated than it needed to be. I did some undershading with a redder skin tone and tried to build up the shades with lighter paints and contrast type paints. I ended up going back and painting over most of it with cork from AK and then building it back up into a lighter shade. On his thumbnail in the game, Uncle Nelson is pretty pale, but due to him sitting in the shadow on his porch, I think he looks a little bit darker. I tried to go for an in-between, but I think I went a little paler than intended. But it's good enough. Someone living in the desert, drinking beer and smoking on their porch is bound to get a tan, but either way, that's more explanation than needed for this. His clothes and hair are mostly a big selection of grey tones and shades. I don't think I used any pure white for his eyes, but I did add some red wash near the edges of his eyes, just slightly. The wheelchair got a very sparse, cartoony, non-metallic metal paint job, if you can call it that. Once all that was painted, I went on to build him his porch. I used some of those big tongue depressors, huge popsicle sticks, and cut off the rounded sides and glued them together and onto a small frame I made with some smaller hobby sticks. It all got painted brown. I tried to add some wood grain with a fan brush and different shades of AK Quick Gen and then some lighter paints that I smudged into a wood pattern. I used the same technique on the little side table he has, which actually became too narrow, but it works. A can of kuk, that sounds bad in Norwegian, was made using some styrene tubes and some styrene sheets that I cut into the right shapes. I even used my Gunpla scribing tools to add a little hole at the top and adding a rim. I didn't properly document it here, but I think I used some red and yellow quick-gen paints to make the orange color of the can more vibrant. The cigarette packs were made from more styrene sheets, this time some thicker ones that I cut into the right square size and glued two of them together to get the right thickness, before scoring lines for the opening and painting them. The ashtray was also made from styrene rather quickly. I also added a little styrene rod and painted it as a cigarette. And that's basically it. Here's Uncle Nelson relaxing on his porch. Hope you enjoyed this little video, thanks for watching and hope to see you on the next one.